Hey guys, what's going on? So in this video, I'm going to show you 3 things it is that I did in the last year to improve my drawing in order to take my illustration from the image it is that you see here on the top into the image it is that you see down here on the bottom. So I'm going to show you these 2 images. Now this was a concept it is that I came up with. The original one here is called New Genesis, and I'm just going to zoom in here and kind of show you the image, and then I'll show you the new one. This one is called Forbidden Fruit. The idea of this piece was that I wanted to create something that was kind of like my commentary on the AI situation. You know, almost like AI is kind of like the forbidden fruit that we can't help but want to actually taste from, right? And so I wanted to create some sort of an image where I had like kind of a cybernetic Eve who was contemplating whether she was going to eat the apple or not. And so this first image that you see up here at the top is actually an image it is that I created probably like 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. It's quite old, but I like the idea, and I think the idea is obviously very timely considering we're kind of living through the AI revolution now. And so I wanted to recreate this image and kind of show you some of the things it is that I learned and how this can actually improve your own drawing, right? So the first thing it is when I went back and I took a look at this illustration, there was a couple of different things it is that I noticed that I didn't like. For one thing, it just felt really like tight over here. It felt like it was very scrunched in with her arm, but there was so much space over here, which I kind of like that there was a lot of space over here. There's something about it that feels cool, the way it is that it flows over here, and that it's not sitting right in the middle of the illustration, which it can make an illustration look cool, but it led to the arm being so squished over here that it just didn't feel right to me. So I wanted to take that. That was kind of the first thing it is that I noticed. I also noticed that the symbolism which I had here was of the Ouroboros back here, which is a symbol of the never-ending cycle of death and rebirth, which is what we're definitely going through with this whole AI revolution. I wanted to include that because I really like that as a background element, but I also felt like outside of the Ouroboros and the apple, nobody really knows like what the context of this image is, right? And so I wanted to incorporate some other visual elements that I'll get into here in a little bit with this background image and with this belt right here, this belt buckle. We'll get into that in a minute, what those mean. So the first thing it is that I wanted to do was I took it all the way back to the beginning, which is through the ideation phase. And this was the first thing it is that I did when I created the image, but whenever I redid it, I tried to explore that a little bit more, right? And so I had this idea of a cyborg Eve eating the apple, right? That was kind of the idea. But there was other things it is that I noted that I wanted to change. For one, I wanted to change her pose. I wanted the pose to feel more organic and make it feel more like it flows in the illustration. Whereas if you look at the image itself, I mean, her arm is kind of just kind of hanging out here in empty space. It's not really doing anything. And some of the shapes, like the way her forehead is, it just feels very kind of masculine and weird. It doesn't really feel sexy to me. So I wanted to give like a Vogue pose, like a sexy slick kind of pose. And then I wanted to incorporate other visual elements that kind of suggest this idea of death and rebirth. And so I was just coming back from a trip to Mexico. And so I had the idea of Day of the Dead. And also I write a lot about and I research a lot about esoteric ideas like the Philosopher's Stone, and so I wanted to incorporate that into the image. So this kind of gave me a background of what I could look for in terms of my reference. And this phase right here, whenever it is that you're going through this phase, you can go as far as it is that you want to. And you really just want to brainstorm as many different things without censoring yourself. You write out everything it is that you could possibly think of in relation to the topic or the idea it is that you have, because even if it doesn't seem obvious, it can somehow be worked into the finished illustration, either through a color scheme or through a composition, a pose, or something along those lines. So whenever I started to go and get my reference, you can see my reference sheet here. There's a lot of different reference it is that I'm taking. Like I mentioned before, with the different issues I was having with my illustration, you can see my notes here about what it is that I did and didn't like about the illustration, how I didn't feel like it worked. And then here I am analyzing and looking at the images it is that I was actually going to take inspiration from, and I can see that there's some really good flow that's going on in these Vogue images that I really appreciate. And the same thing goes here too, right? You have this nice back and forth kind of flow in each one of these images, and that's what creates that sense of a dynamic figure, a dynamic image that makes it visually appealing to look at. I also started going here and collect some imagery of things that remind me of Day of the Dead, a bouquet of flowers with a skull. I extended that into the Blue Lotus, right? That's another metaphor for rebirth. And as far as the artist I was looking at for inspiration, I was looking at Mobius. The image feels kind of like a Mobius image. We'll get to the finished piece here in a little bit, but it feels like that. And the things that I really wanted to take from Mobius was this kind of contrast between the really nice line work he does, but then the color that he brings in that is very it feels very much like a painting, right? It's not just like these flat colors. He incorporates this kind of watercolor painting, and you can see that he's got some variation in the color schemes here that really make it pop, right? Especially up here with this bird. So I really like his colors, and of course I have this Philosopher's Stone thing here that I was going to incorporate into it, right? So the second thing, just to go back over this, is to gather more reference and try not to be too literal about it, right? Like, even though Mobius is an inspiration, I don't want to just take something from Mobius and do a copy of something that he does. I want to understand what it is that I like about it, and then take it and apply it to my own work, so it's still my own work without it being, too much like his work. So we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at the final illustration, but actually I'm going to pull in one more thing. Okay, and so the third thing it is that I did was that I simplified my detail . So the third thing I did it is that I did, now that we're looking at the finished illustration here. Now the third thing it is that I did was that I simplified my detail while at the same time expanding the color in my piece. I didn't want the image to feel flat, and so what it is that I did, I'll kind of zoom in here. You can see that I added a lot of color variation on the skin tone, which kind of gives it this kind of psychedelic kind of vibe to it, which I really appreciate. And so this accomplishes a couple of different things. For one thing, it adds a lot of visual interest, and it makes things seem not as flat. If I had just done this as a normal comic book type of illustration, then the colors could have been just one color, and it just really wouldn't have been as interesting or has had as much of an effect. It also has a nice contrast because you can look here in the background and you can see that it's mostly one color. There's a faded kind of color thing that I'm doing back there with this kind of pattern. But this helps it pop out from the background as well, the color variation. So this is kind of creating a kind of color noise, right? Now, the interesting thing about this is that if I take this image and I put it into grayscale, like I have here, if I look at this image in grayscale, if I zoom in here, you can see that the value range is mostly the same, right? The value range is mostly the same. Meanwhile, when we look at the illustration, we can see that the color variation, when we look at it in color, the color variation is there. So the reason why this is because the colors themselves are within the same value range as one another. And that's something it is that if you're interested in, I can make a video about that in particular. But for now, I'm going to leave it at that, except for I'm going to also explain the detail real quick, and then I'll go ahead and close this video out. Now, with the detail, there's a couple of different things it is that I did. I tried to keep all the major detail kind of pointing all in the same direction, right? Which is the focal point. My focal point is here and here. And I guess you could say this is as well, but this will kind of lead us back around here. But obviously the figure here, we have a couple of different things that are helping draw our attention there. We have this big circle, this white circle that's creating a point of contrast, that's pushing her forward. But the other thing it is that we have repeating shapes throughout the image, right? Which is that it's very circular. There's a circle here, there's a circle here, there's a circle back here, right? And there's a circle down here, right? And this creates a sense of cohesion in the image. Now, when it comes to the detail on the original, if we go back and we look at the original real quick. If we go back and look at the detail on the original, the detail's kind of everywhere, right? And the circle is also kind of off. It's like over here in this corner. It's kind of like over here in this corner, which is just really not that interesting. Which is really just not that interesting, right? It makes it feel kind of weird when you look at the two in comparison. But all of the mechanical detail as well is very much kind of all over the place. It's down here, it's down here. There's a lot of shadow shapes, and then there's detail down here in the crotch area and whatnot. And I wanted to take all that detail that was here basically away and let the color do my work for me here, while taking all the detail and pushing it up here near my focal point. And again, the reason why that is because you want all of your detail where it is that you want the person to look. This makes it to where it's immediately readable, right? And so I have all this detail kind of grouped over here in this area, and then I have this kind of wide open space with some more detail here. And notice that in the detail, there's always variety, right? There's a small, there's a big, there's a medium, little lines here. And the same thing goes with this, right? There's all this variety in here. But at the same time, there's not so much variety that it just feels chaotic. Everything is grouped on this side, and then there's an empty space over here. So detail, it needs a space to breathe, right? So you need to be able to put the detail in an area that it can create a contrast point in order for the person to look there. So again, let's go back to this original piece here. And you can see, just when I look at the image, that it looks cohesive. And then of course we have the Philosopher's Stone down here as an added element of detail for anybody who wants to look at her belt, right? So here we go. We got this kind of sexy cyborg Eve illustration. Those were some of the things that I've learned in the last couple years from doing master studies, which I have tons of videos on this channel of. They're all called Illustration Masterclass. You can find them on the playlist here. You can check all those out. If you'd like to support what it is that I do, or you would like to get some exclusive videos or videos early ahead of time, such as a video like this, you can check out my Patreon, which is linked below. And also, if you would like to see a print version of this, if you'd like to purchase a print version of this, you can do so in the link down below. I also want to give a shout out to my patrons, Nick, Austin, and Vivat. All three of you guys have been supporting my Patreon for a while now, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate all of the help. You can join my Patreon for $5 a month and hang out with other cool creative people. Thanks for watching. Please make sure to give me a like, give me a sub, or drop me a comment if this was helpful for you. All right, take care.